Have you ever felt like something was off? Like the stories you were told about God, sin, and salvation didn't quite add up. You were told to have faith, to believe without questioning.
But what if the very foundation of that belief system was built on something other than divine truth?
Today, we are going to peel back the layers and explore 10 ways religion may have lied to you. This isn't about attacking personal faith, but about understanding the history and structures that have shaped what billions of people believe.
Let's start at the beginning. The first big lie, that religion started pure and was later corrupted.
The truth is, religion didn't start pure, it started political. From the very beginning, religious systems were incredibly effective tools for organizing societies. Think about it. How do you get thousands of people to cooperate, follow laws, and build a civilization?
You create a shared story, a higher authority that everyone must answer to. Early kings and pharaohs didn't just rule. They claimed to be gods or to have a direct line to them.
This was a genius move.
Suddenly, obedience to the king wasn't just a political act.
It was a sacred duty.
Disobeying your ruler became the same as disobeying God himself. This tied power and divinity together, making the king's authority absolute and unquestionable. This leads us to the second point. Many religious rules were designed for control, not necessarily for your spiritual growth. The countless laws about what you can eat, what you can wear, how you should behave sexually, and which rituals you must perform, these weren't just random.
They created a powerful social order.
When everyone follows the same strict code, it builds a strong group identity and makes it easy to spot outsiders.
But more than that, it kept people in line through fear. Break a rule, and you face divine punishment.
Morality wasn't about understanding why something was right or wrong.
It became about enforcement and avoiding consequences. This system turned complex human ethics into a simple list of do's and don'ts, enforced by the threat of a wrathful deity.
So, who decided what these rules were? This brings us to the third lie, that divine authority was actually divine.
In reality, it was almost always human authority in disguise.
Throughout history, a small, elite group of priests, prophets, and scholars claimed the exclusive right to interpret God's will. They were the gatekeepers of knowledge, the ones who told everyone else what the sacred texts meant and what God wanted.
This created a powerful hierarchy. If you questioned the priests, you weren't just questioning a man.
You were questioning God.
All power, spiritual, political, and social, became centralized in the hands of this religious class. They held the keys to heaven, and everyone else had to go through them. And what better tool to maintain control than the concepts of heaven and hell? This was an incredibly effective system of fear and reward. The idea is simple. Follow our rules, and you will be rewarded with eternal bliss. Disobey, and you will suffer unimaginable torment for all eternity. For rulers and religious leaders, this was a far more powerful motivator than any earthly police force. Fear of eternal damnation worked much better than education or appealing to people's better nature.
It was a behavioral control system on a cosmic scale.
Why risk eternal fire for a moment of rebellion? The sheer terror of hell was enough to stop most dissent in its tracks, ensuring the power structure remained stable. But where did these rules and stories come from?
From sacred texts, of course.
But here's the fifth point. These texts were heavily edited, translated, and selected by people with agendas.
The books that make up the Bible, the Quran, or other scriptures are not the only religious writings that ever existed. There were hundreds of other gospels, texts, and letters often called apocrypha or Gnostic texts that were deliberately excluded, suppressed, or even destroyed. The councils and committees that decided which books made it into the official canon were made up of powerful men making political and theological decisions.
What survived and became God's word was often what best served the interests of the Roman Empire or other ruling powers. Translations also changed meanings to fit new cultural contexts, further distancing the text from its original intent.
Furthermore, many of the most famous religious stories weren't even original.
Miracles and myths that we associate with modern religions dated them by centuries.
The story of a virgin birth. It appeared in the stories of Horus in Egypt and Mithras in Persia.
A god who dies and is resurrected.
That's the story of Osiris, Tammuz, and Dionysus.
A great flood that wipes out humanity. That story is found in the Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Mesopotamia, long before the Bible was written.
Religions didn't invent these narratives out of thin air.
They often borrowed, adapted, and reused powerful,
familiar myths that already resonated with people.
It was a way of making a new religion feel both timeless and familiar.
This brings us to a crucial point about how belief is formed.
For most of history, faith was taught before critical thinking.
You were born into a religion.
It was part of your cultural inheritance, like your language or your name. You didn't choose to be Christian, Muslim, or Hindu.
You were simply told that's what you were. From your earliest moments, you were taught what to believe.
And what happened if you started to have doubts? Doubt was framed as dangerous, a temptation from the devil, or a sign of a weak character.
It was treated as a sin.
Why? Because questions threaten authority. A system built on unquestioning obedience cannot survive if people start thinking for themselves and asking why.
As societies changed, so did the image of God. Early gods, like those in the Old Testament or Greek mythology, were very human-like. They got angry, jealous, and vindictive.
They walked the earth, fought battles, and had personal relationships with people.
They were physical and emotional. But as civilizations grew more complex and philosophical, the concept of God evolved. He became more abstract, omniscient, omnipotent, and perfectly moral, an incorporeal force of pure goodness.
This shift reflects our own changing understanding of the universe and morality. God's image wasn't static.
It was a mirror, reflecting the cultural and intellectual evolution of humanity itself.
God didn't make us in his image. We made him in ours. This is why it's so important to understand that spirituality and religion are not the same thing. This might be the most liberating realization of all. Spirituality is your personal, internal journey. It's about finding meaning, connection, purpose, and a sense of awe in the universe. It's driven by your own curiosity and experience.
Religion, on the other hand, is a structured external system. It provides a packaged set of beliefs, rules, rituals, and a community.
One asks you to explore your own inner world.
The other asks you to obey an outer authority.
You can be deeply spiritual without belonging to any religion, and you can be religious without feeling any real spiritual connection. And that brings us to the biggest lie of all, the one that underpins everything else, the lie that you were never allowed to question. You were told that faith is a virtue and doubt is a sin. You were taught that some questions are off limits. But think about it. Why would truth be afraid of investigation? If something is truly real, it should be able to withstand scrutiny.
Real, authentic belief isn't fragile. It can survive and even be strengthened by hard questions.
The only thing that fears questioning is a system of control.
Because when people start to think for themselves, to analyze the history,
and to trust their own moral compass, the entire structure of control, built on fear and obedience, begins to collapse. Your mind was never the enemy. It's your greatest tool for finding what is real. Thank you so much for watching. If this resonated with you, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss our next video.